Welcome into episode 542 of the Skate Podcast. So, Bridgette and Scott, real quick, now that I think about it, this is our true 500th episode together because we began episode 42, correct?
Wow.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that, I feel like, was that a trade deadline episode?
What?
I feel like that was a trade deadline episode, was it not?
You know what, Bridgette? It actually may have been, it was right around when they got Taylor Hall. So I don't know if it was a trade deadline reaction, but it was right around that point. And I know we celebrated 500 episodes earlier this season for the Skate Pod in general, but if we're talking us three, this would be our 500th. So
Wow.
Look at that. Something exciting to come from this episode, because I can tell you one thing, that was not an exciting trade deadline. League-wide, maybe, if not the most boring one. Not to sell this episode right off the top here, but that was a pretty boring.
You guys need to listen to this one.
Just move along to the next thumbnail you see in your scroll.
Jason Tatum's playing tonight.
Yeah.
It was like, kept kind of waiting to see if something big was coming down. We were over at Warrior, just sitting in the press box up there, and it's like, all right, like Braden Shen, that's fairly notable. And of course, arguably the biggest deal came down like way after the deadline, which was Nazem Kadri going back to Colorado. So maybe that coming in late spices it up a little, but yeah, in general, it felt like, a lot of players whose names have been out there, and a lot of teams who had been linked to potentially bigger stuff just didn't come to fruition. I think that there's probably a few reasons for that we can get into, but yeah, it was a relatively quieter deadline overall.
I tried to ask Don about that. He didn't really go for it, but it's okay. We'll get into some of the responses. We can get into some. Brian, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, before sometimes the three of us have squirrel brains. Before we go too much further, Bridgette, we should read off the deals that the Bruins did do.
Let's do it. These are three guys. I'll just preface this by
brace yourself, listeners. This is going to take a while. Just a lot to get through here.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, so first move happened early in the day. When was this? This was at like 11:30 in the morning. All right, so Scott was already at the rink. He's already at Warrior, preparing himself for a long day of work. And this comes down. It is a minor league trade. So the Bruins acquired forwards Alexis Gendron and Massimo Rizzo from the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for forward Brett Harrison and defenseman Jackson Edwards. So basically just a swapping of prospects in the AHL. And then we sat there for a long time before we head down to the media room post, the 3:00 deadline. This came through at 3:30. Really exciting stuff. The Bruins traded for Lukas Reichel from the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for a 2026 6th-round draft pick. And if people recognize the name, I know we're not talking about Eichel, we're talking about Reichel. He played for Germany in the Olympics. So if you caught any of their games, maybe you saw something from him, but he's played 188 career NHL games. Obviously, his connection with Sturm, being a German native, and I guess they have some history with each other. He was a first-round draft pick back in 2020, so he was 17th overall, so he was once a higher prospect, but kind of, I guess, didn't really find a home there in Vancouver. So all three of those guys are going to report to Providence when they get here. And Sweeney mentioned he didn't think there would be a visa issue with Reichel being German, playing in Canada currently, trying to come back and play in the U.S. sometimes slows down the process, but he thought it should be fine because he was previously with Chicago. But anyway, yeah, three guys that are going to go play for the Providence Bruins, and no one off your active NHL roster goes out the door either. So it was not a lot in and nothing out besides two guys that have been with the Providence Bruins for a while in a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, like, not the most exciting. I mean, I think Reichel is an interesting player and a perfectly fine, low risk. I don't know about high reward, but potentially some reward. That there is talent there. He's very fast. He's speedy winger. I think was naturally a center, but has played a lot more wing as a pro. He's still 23, so like maybe he figures it out. He does have NHL experience, and he's been used on a penalty kill and stuff, so he has some flexibility. He's not just an offense only guy. So you see if you can get something out of him that Chicago and Vancouver couldn't really get. 6th-round pick is nothing. So like that's fine. And then the prospects trade, I think that's 4 guys who were probably looking for a fresh start, right? Like at one time, I think the Bruins had higher hopes for both Brett Harrison and Jackson Edward, but things just weren't really coming together for them in the AHL. Harrison was playing a pretty limited role. Same with Edward. Edward spent some time in the ECHL. Just seemed like they just weren't on the path that maybe the Bruins had, a couple of years ago would have hoped that they were on. And probably the same thing for the guys they got. I think both have an intriguing upside that just hadn't been tapped into. Massimo Rizzo was a huge part of 2 national title teams at Denver in 2022. In 2024, he was a great college player, but just hasn't really translated to any production as a pro yet. So, yeah, I don't have any real expectations for those 2. Reichel, I'm interested in. Like, I think he'll get a look in Boston at some point. I don't know if it's this season or next year, but there's potentially still something untapped there.
Yeah, what I'm curious about is what happened with him in Vancouver, because he obviously got drafted by Chicago and he started his career there, and he gets traded from Chicago to Vancouver, which isn't super uncommon to see a young player get drafted and it just isn't a fit with the team that drafted him. But the curious part to me is what happened when he went to Vancouver, because that's a team that acquired him for a 4th-round draft pick not too long ago. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he playing overseas despite being a Vancouver asset? Like, he has 19 games played this year. I thought he was playing elsewhere at one point this year, despite being, I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but
I don't think so.
I thought he was trying to go play overseas. There was something there where he off the ice. There was just some disconnect with him and the Canucks who traded for him, and it was so quickly. It just went sour so quick, and I don't know what happened there. Not covering Vancouver. It's obviously 3 hours behind us and not a team that we're involved with, but that's the one that is more curious to me. Is okay, I understand why maybe he didn't work out in Chicago. Shit happens. But why did he go to Vancouver and within a calendar year he's already gone, and it never seemed like it was a fit from the jump. So I'm curious about that, and I want to do some research on
14 games in Vancouver and 23 in Abbotsford with their AHL team.
Okay, so he was in the minors. Okay, so maybe what I'm thinking of is he was trying to maybe he was trying to get released from his contract to go play overseas the rest of this. I don't know. There was something I thought I saw about that, but either way, he's been a player that just clearly wasn't happy in Vancouver, and he was there for such a short stint. Now, I know Vancouver is not necessarily Disney World right now is the happiest place on earth, but it's still curious to me. So when we finish recording here, I want to take some time and read more about what was coming out of Vancouver with him, because I'm curious about that. But if we're talking just the 6th-round pick you gave up to acquire him, Scott, you're right. He does have speed and he has some skill. So to me, it's a flyer well worth it. Bridgette, you mentioned the German connection to Marco Sturm. I think there's some validity to that in terms of why it could work in Boston, and maybe he needs the right coaching and the right guidance. So, yeah, you have my curiosity in terms of Lukas Reichel. The minor league deal, with all due respect to the players involved, it's just, I don't really think it merits much conversation. I know Brett Harrison has his fans in Jackson. I get that. And it just seems like a situation where you got 2 players in Providence who weren't destined for Boston and 2 players in Lehigh Valley who weren't destined for Philly. And, you do a little minor league swap and see if something sticks. Beyond that, I can't offer much. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, honestly like ready to move on from those guys if you
Yeah,
guys want. But
I think we've covered them. I mean, the big thing is
So Jackson Edward was born in.
It's the thing is like the main things are what you didn't lose, right? You didn't gain anything, but you also didn't lose those first round picks. We were wondering like, or would they go out on a limb and you know get rid of one of their upcoming first round picks? They decided to hold on, stay in pat. Don Sweeney kind of referred to it as like staying the course of what they kind of started last season when they sold at the deadline to get those picks, to kind of stay on that path of trying to replenish the system. So they don't give up prospects, your grade A prospects, like your obviously Hagens at the top, and then Zellers and Letourneau and a few other guys that would have been, maybe of interest to teams. Those guys stay here. And I was trying to get at, some of that with my questions to Don Sweeney, which were, did you just value your assets, meaning the first round picks and the high end prospects, so much so that you just couldn't see giving up on them for anything that was, that was out there? And basically the answer was, we learned what other people value our guys as and what other people value our assets as. And that at this time, it wasn't the right time to go in and spend them, basically. Scott, tell me if you interpreted it differently, but it sounded like, all right, we learned that some people maybe don't value our prospects as much as we thought, or in whether they're talking about, they maybe people don't value Patra at as high as the Bruins do. Maybe they were coming for Hagens and the Bruins weren't willing to give up Hagens, or maybe they didn't value Hagens as highly as the Bruins do, or the picks that the Bruins have accumulated mean more to them than they do to the other teams. So, Scott, tell me if you read that the same way.
No, I think that's a fair reading. Like, and I think that's, I mean, I think that happens with almost every team in almost every sport. Like you tend to value your guys more than another team might. And sometimes sometimes there can be a slap in the face when you go to the market and you think like, oh, well, this prospect's, the equivalent of a top 15 pick. And then you find out other teams don't think that. Like, because you're invested, right? Like you've drafted that player, you've poured the resources into their development, you've gotten to know the person, and if it's a good kid, like you see all that, and then another team doesn't have all that background, so like you can't expect them to maybe love that player as much. I did think, what was also interesting when Sweeney was talking about not getting anything really done now, is he on multiple occasions referenced, maybe like setting the stage for stuff to revisit in the offseason. He at a couple times mentioned like, that this stuff like we can circle back on closer to the draft, at the draft, maybe after the draft. So that's always a part of trade deadline season too, is maybe you don't get something done now, but you plant the seeds and you get an idea of what the other team's looking for. The other team starts to, evaluate your prospects, and you start to get an idea of like, okay, there's real interest here, and maybe there's something that can be figured out down the line, even though we didn't get there right now. And like, I always like to mention that, especially when it comes to bigger trades, like when you think of like the really big names, like a Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
I think I said this, like that's a hard deal to get done in season. Like sometimes that stuff has to wait for the offseason. That doesn't mean Robert Thomas is going to get traded this offseason either. And it doesn't mean it's going to be the Bruins who get him. But I would guess, I think we pretty much know the Bruins at least checked in there and had conversations.
Yeah.
As did a lot of teams. And Robert Thomas did not get moved. There's a bunch of players that popped up in rumors who did not get moved, right? Colton Parayko vetoed a deal to Buffalo, did not get moved in any other trade. Jordan Kyrou did not get moved from St. Louis. Rasmus Ristolainen didn't get traded. Vincent Trocheck didn't get traded. Yep. those are all guys with term left, so their teams didn't have to trade them now. Maybe we can go through like some of the guys who did get moved, because some of the players linked to the Bruins did. Justin Falk did get traded. He went to Detroit. Who were the other obvious ones?
Shen was something.
Oh yeah, Braden Shen went to the Islanders. Yeah.
You mentioned Kadri earlier.
Yep, Nazem Kadri.
Well, last night was Carlson, which wasn't connected to the Bruins, but was.
And Connor Garland to the Blue Jackets. So yeah, like some of the guys they were linked to moved, and quite a few didn't.
It's interesting because there's a lot of thoughts just league wide. There are, and we can get to this maybe a little bit later on, who were deadline winners and losers. And, there are some teams out there that I thought were going to be buying that didn't do anything. One team that comes to mind is Montreal. They didn't do anything, I don't think. And then there's teams that I thought for sure were going to do a wholesale if they could, and maybe did a little, but not as much as I thought. I mean, and like Vancouver comes to mind. You mentioned Connor Garland, but and I think, Tyler Myers went to, where'd Myers go? Where'd Myers go? Dallas, maybe?
Yeah. He went to Dallas.
So, I mean, they did some, but they didn't do, I don't know, like we can get to all that stuff, but as it pertains to the Bruins, they obviously stood pat, right? For the most part. I would say they straight up just like stood pat. So the two questions we can ask off of that reality is, A, should they have bought more? We can answer that first. And then the second question is, B, should they have sold more, right? So let's start with the buying question. Should they have bought more? Now, you mentioned Robert Thomas. He didn't get traded. He was the only player really that we were talking about up front where I was like, okay, anything pretty much outside of Hagens, I think you really gotta, see if you can acquire a player like that, because he's a 26-year-old 1C that is legit. Clearly, as the day was going along, that was not going to happen. He wasn't really going anywhere. You weren't seeing his name anywhere. And then you see where other players were getting traded to, and that people were giving up a first-round pick for Braden Shen, first-round pick for Justin Falk. Guys are going for Connor Garland. I think went for like a second and a fourth. I forget what did Kadri go for a first, conditional first. You see Nick Waugh go for a first rounder. Like, I'm just looking at this market outside of the potential of Robert Thomas, who is still a Blue. Up front, I think I speak for the three of us here. I wasn't interested in giving up a first round pick for anybody whose name we were seeing out there. So I am all set with them not giving up what teams gave up for the players that they got at this deadline. So if we're talking about buying, I don't think the Bruins should have bought in any more than what they did based on a player like Robert Thomas not being available. All the other players that moved, good luck to you and your new team. And I'm not Boston's path this year. No way. And we can get to the should they have sold more in a minute.
I'll point out the trend of what happened to the guys that the Bruins were linked to that didn't end up going anywhere. And the trend is that those were guys that still had term left. The Bruins weren't really linked to rentals too much because they are not in the market for rentals right now. That's not where they are. Other teams were willing to give first round picks because they're in win now mode. The Bruins aren't at that spot in their trajectory currently. So the guys that they were connected to were the guys that still had years left, like Robert Thomas and Proulx. Those guys don't end up getting moved because those teams still have time to shop them and see if they can get something else for them. And they didn't have to try and get something. They didn't have to be desperate. They were just hoping somebody blew them away. Clearly no one did. And so they hold on to those guys for longer because they still have time to figure out what they want to do with them. So, and I think the same thing can be said for the potential buyers who said, no, I'm not giving you James Hagens and a first for, they were cautious of doing the deal because they weren't willing to go over the top with their offer because they liked what they already had and they wanted to hold on to it. We heard that what the ask was for Robert Thomas was that you were going to have to give up like they were interested in some of the top centers that were drafted last draft, like Denwye and Hagens. So those guys were probably, every organization that has a guy like that doesn't really feel like they want to give that up. So they keep them, not surprisingly. And I don't think either side is wrong for walking away from the table in that case, because especially if you were drafting top 10 this past draft, you probably need that pick to replenish your system. Like that's probably a really important piece for your future. And to not want to give that away, or other first round picks that are upcoming that you value similarly.
Yeah, I mean, like going through the trades that got made, I'm like, I don't think there's a single one here where I'm like, oh, the Bruins should have done that.
No.
But like, basically every single one of them, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine not paying that. Tyler Myers for a second and a fourth, I'm good. Mackenzie Weegar, 3 second-round picks, a prospect, and Ali Mata. Like, I'm fine. I said before, I didn't love that he had 5 years left on his contract. A bunch of trades were just depth guys, which, like, the Bruins didn't need, right? Like, I kept hearing that, too, of, like, well, can they at least make a move for depth? Like, do something to show the team, like, you're adding. And I'm like, well, add depth for what reason? Like this team has depth. The Bruins have guys who can play in the bottom 6 and at the bottom of their decor. Like that's not the problem. If they're going to make a deal, to me, it had to be for an impact player. And there just weren't a lot of those moved. Like you go, Connor Garland goes for a second and a third round pick, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, turns 30 next week and has 6 years left after that. Like I'm fine not doing that. John Carlson for a first and a third. John Carlson's a rental. He's a free agent after the season. Still a good player. And I kind of love that for Anaheim, being aggressive like that, but I'm fine with the Bruins not doing that. Like that wouldn't make a ton of sense to me. Bobby Brink goes for a top prospect, David Jiricek. That's, kind of a different kind of deal. Corey Perry for a second. Again, like he's a depth player at this point. Like Bruins don't need to be doing something like that. Justin Falk, right? Justin Falk's the player they were linked to. Goes for a first round pick, a third round pick. Justin Hall, who's NHL depth defenseman, and a prospect, Dmitry Buchelnikov.
What year is that? What year was that first rounder in, Scott? I'm just curious.
This year.
Insane.
2026.
Insane. The Bruins would never do that.
Yeah, for a 33-year-old who, is only signed for one more year after this, like, no, like, just so none of the deals that got made are ones that I'm like, oh yeah, the Bruins should have done that. So then you go to the ones that weren't made, and it's like, well, obviously the Bruins weren't the only team unwilling to meet those asking prices because no one did. So that kind of tells me that, maybe they just weren't realistic asking prices. And to Bridget's point, like those teams didn't have to move those guys because they all had term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, would you have done this? Nick Delorier for a 7th round pick?
I'm glad you brought that up, Bridget, because can you guys recall a trade deadline where you have the 2 top teams in the conference and they have as bare bones of a deadline as like between Tampa Bay and Carolina? Again, Carolina, who is consistently, you want to talk about the Brady Tkachuk comment to Leon in the Olympics, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. I mean, Carolina, I know they have the Cup in 06, different day and age, but they are constantly guilty of just having a hell of a team, but they don't do enough on paper at the deadlines to put themselves over the edge. And so you go out there and you acquire Nick Delorier. Like, and again, to our conversation, there wasn't really a ton of, prize guys to be had, but so they get Delorier and Tampa Bay brings back Corey Perry for a 2nd rounder. And that's what your 2 top teams in the Eastern Conference do to put them over the edge of the deadline. I'm sorry. This Eastern Conference is wide open right now. And, like, I don't know. Do I want the Bruins going after Braden Shen? No. But, like, could Carolina go after? Sure. Like, could Carolina go after somebody? Like, Carolina is the most complacent, good, not great, not contender team I've ever seen in my life. It's every year. They can't get it done. It's crazy to me.
I know, and like this season, it's like you finally have the Florida Panthers out of their way, the team that keeps knocking them off. But there's like seemingly no urgency to be like all in and be like, this is our year. And it's like, why not? There's not enough. There aren't enough other really good teams in this conference. And yeah, it's like, it seems like they're content just settling for what usually happens, which is like, okay, they'll get out of this side of the bracket and probably lose to Tampa. I mean, I don't know. Like, you know what? Honestly, like, who knows? Like, I'm not 100% sold on Tampa either. Like, but I think all things considered, they're the best team in the conference, but they're not infallible by any means.
At least they have their 2 cups in the last, whatever it is, 6 years, and they've got 3 since 04, and they've been to a couple other finals. But you look at Carolina, and I mean, great story is Brandon Bussey, somebody that is like, somebody that you have no questions about in the post. He's never done it before. Like, Carolina, man, there were some teams in the East that I feel like kind of had it. Like, I think Buffalo, they added some guys that I don't think they're incredible players, but they beefed up their lineup a bit, right? I mean, you bring in Luke Shen, they brought in Logan Stanley from Winnipeg. Who else they bring in?
Like, they at least were.
Yeah.
Like, they were connected to a lot of people. Like, the fact that they were willing to give up whatever it was going to take to get Parayko, and he just said means that they were willing to play ball with,
Now, to be fair, they haven't been buyers in over a decade, so they were licking their lips to do so. But credit to them.
I actually ended up being pretty underwhelmed by their deadline, and it probably because it started at such a high point of like, oh, they're getting Colton Parayko, which is like a real difference maker, and then obviously that falls through, and they end up just making like a bunch of depth move.
Oh, is it me or is it Scott?
No, it's Scott. It's Scott in the office.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Scott, we heard you say that they've done some depth moves.
Yeah, like Luke Shen and Logan Stanley, it's like, cool. You should be playing better defensemen than them in the playoffs. Sam Carrick's a depth forward. Tanner Pearson, don't think he really has much left in the tank. I'm like, to me, that's pretty disappointing that they went from kind of shooting for the stars to like really settling for guys who don't really move the needle for me.
Yeah, but think about it. Like, Shen was still one of the bigger names that was moved. Like, there wasn't a lot.
Well, not Luke Shen, Braden Shen, yes.
Oh, okay. No. There was a lot that didn't happen, and I think that there were plenty of teams that were probably ready and wanted to add. I don't know. It was just such a weird day. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense. Why weren't teams? Some teams were full sellers, right? But like, everyone else seemed to kind of be hesitant. Like, I think we're cool where we are. There were so many teams that were fine with what they were currently at in their organizations, that they just didn't really feel like they needed to push the envelope. And so, yeah, I mean, Buffalo tried. The good news is they failed, right? Like, for the Bruins, it's great news that they didn't get to add anybody huge, because right now you're looking at a team that's getting better in your division, and you don't want to see that. You don't want to see Buffalo add a bunch of guys, sign them, like, for a few years, and then you're like, oh crap, now how are we going to contend with Buffalo? We weren't even thinking of them in the picture. Oh, Montreal adds more people. Oh, now we have to try to beat a better Montreal team. Like, that didn't happen. So that's good news. The bad news was that Columbus did make a few moves that might help them jump you into a playoff spot. So
yeah, or they end up finishing top 3 in the Metro, and Boston's duking it out with Pittsburgh or whomever, right? Yeah. But yes, your point is still there. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the standings right now, and okay, Vancouver right now, they're dead last, and they're dead last by a lot. I mean, anyway, so I felt like Vancouver. You lose Quinn Hughes earlier this year, okay, and then you trade away Garland, you trade away Tyler Myers. I don't know. Well, obviously, Lucas Reichel, but he's clearly wasn't a part of their plans. I feel like granted, players have no moves, so they can exercise those if they want. I just feel like Vancouver could have done some more, but at the same time, they're so far ahead of the pack as at having the first overall pick that, whatever, they're already kind of tanking. But Calgary is right behind them, or I should say in front of them. And they did trade away Rasmus Anderson. They did trade away Kadri. They did trade away Weegar. So Calgary, they efficiently were very much sellers. But some other teams like St. Louis, I think they tried to be. I think they were kind of like they dipped their toes in, but they didn't fully lean into it. But at the same time, right now they have the 3rd overall pick, and you still have Parayko and Thomas, and maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. The Rangers
still have Jordan Binnington.
Yeah,
none of the big goalie trades that we heard about happened either. Like Sergei Bobrovsky stayed put, and now there's reports that the Panthers might just extend him, and so weird. Yeah, just weird.
The Rangers, JT Miller's still there. Vinny Trocheck is still there. Zibanejad is still there. Adam Fox is still. Again, a lot of these guys have no moves and stuff, but I don't know. They didn't really lean into being sellers. Whatever. Hey, if we weren't getting what you were hoping for, then go for it. Keep players under term, I guess. But overall, it just felt like I put out a tweet that this NHL deadline is equivalent to WrestleMania blank or Stanley Cup Finals blank, as in like what's a shitty Stanley Cup Finals or underwhelming finals or WrestleMania that you could think of that this deadline is equivalent to, and it wasn't much going for it. But that's the buying side of it, guys. Okay, so if the buyer market wasn't great for a team that stood pat, well, okay, why didn't you lean into a couple of sells that maybe you could have gotten some optimization for? Do you have any second guesses with this Bruins team not selling a piece like an Arvidsson or a Peak or whomever? And, from my perspective, I kind of look at that as the Bruins saying, you know what? We don't really think that whatever we'd get for either of those guys would be much of a difference. Anyway, it's kind of small potatoes, and we may not have bought, but not getting rid of anybody in this room is kind of our tip of the cap to the team for what they've done this year. You know what, guys? We didn't go out and add anything crazy, but you know what? We didn't take away from you either. So there's our vote of confidence in you. Your reward is we're not taking away one of your buddies for the next couple of months. Is that the most responsible approach? Jury's out, but I think that's kind of what that was, if I'm reading between the lines.
Well, yeah. Peak, I think, I don't know how much interest there would have been. And Arvidsson, I think they really just wanted to keep. So I don't know if the return would have justified doing anything for Peak. And maybe Arvidsson's another person that the Bruins were like, we value him and we thought we could get something, and other people don't value him as highly. Who knows? I do genuinely think they weren't interested in getting rid of Arvidsson unless it was for, kind of a first round and nothing else. But just because of the value he's had with them this year. And if they really are trying to make the playoffs with who they have now, they're going to need him the rest of the way. Peak, he would have probably been a part of a package deal, right? And that wasn't out there. So I don't know if you're going to 1-for-1 Andrew Peak with an asset that was worth losing him at this moment. Obviously, he's on an expiring contract, so you have to still worry about figuring out what to do in terms of extending or replacing him in the offseason. But it looked like though they were Don Sweeney's explanation, I think, Scott, you posted this in one of your tweets, was basically that they deserved the way they played. Arvidsson and Peak deserved to get to stay the rest of the season with the team.
Yeah, I asked Sweeney specifically, like, did you explore going down the path of selling? And he said he fielded calls, he did due diligence, but ultimately I think the group deserves the opportunity to continue to forge forward. He said if something had made sense that would have helped the team going forward, he would have had to consider it, but sounds like that wasn't out there. And with Arvidsson, like, I don't think he would have gotten a first round pick. I think maybe a second might have been the best that you do. He has a full no move clause, so he would have to sign off on anything. So that also creates the awkward situation of like, if you go to him and he doesn't waive, then how does that play out going forward? And with Peak, I think they were probably maybe a little more open to that, but it would have ideally for them, it would have come with an upgrade on the right side. Like my prediction this morning, like my deadline day morning feeling that like I couldn't shake was that they were going to get Justin Falk and trade away Andrew Peak. Like for some reason that not even like any inside info, just like that's where my mind was of like, I kind of just keep coming back to this.
He was tapping into his psychic abilities, his intuition, the universe.
Yep.
And he was wrong. So.
Yep, exactly. And as I often am, but you know, I mean, Justin Falk did get moved, and I do think the Bruins were in on him to some extent, but not to giving up a first round pick like Detroit did. And yeah, so from there, it's like, yeah, they could have shot Peak, and I would guess you get a third for him, right? Like Connor Murphy got a second straight up. I think Connor Murphy's better than Peak and is probably valued that way. So, you know, maybe you bump it down around from there. But they probably just decided, like, you know what? Peak plays for us, even though he's been scratched a couple times recently. He's going to play. We want depth on the back end, especially if we are going to go into the playoffs and try to make some noise. You always need depth on defense. So let's just maintain the depth we have at the very least. So I don't have a problem with it. You know, I said multiple times on here, like, this is actually the rare year and situation where I'd be pretty okay with standing pat. And that's still how I feel. Like I'm still okay with it. I understand the thinking. I think it makes sense. And we'll see. I admit it'll be tougher to swallow if you end up missing the playoffs. Absolutely. Like, that will make it tougher to swallow. But right now, on going into Friday evening, you're in a playoff spot still. You have a chance. So I'm okay with giving this group a shot and seeing what they can do and hopefully getting them some postseason experience.
Can I tell you guys something? I might be getting soft in my old age, but
yeah,
I got
so am I.
I got no issue with today's deadline for the Bruins. When you consider where they are and what the market was out there, I got no issues with standing pat as well. And Scott, you know, honestly, if they do miss the playoffs, if they sold Andrew Peak or Arvidsson and they got back a third or a second rounder for one of those guys and they missed the playoffs, I want to be sitting here saying, oh, they missed the playoffs, but at least they got that third rounder for who cares? Oh, like, who cares? Third rounder for, like, it's inconsequential. Whether you got Peak or a third, I'm also keep Peak. I'm fine. You know, you want to keep Arvidsson instead of a second round. Like, that's no problem. Like, if we're talking first rounders, you got my attention. Like a late second, you know, when you talk about what the market was out there, the fact that they didn't do something stupid and trade away a first round pick for Folk or Shen or you name it, that's a win to me. I know it's not the sexiest deadline and it's not the most controversial take or conversation we can talk about on here, but I'm fine. Like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, think about the things we hear about the draft picks too. Like, I think people would be mad if some of those draft picks left because of the need of, like, the organizational need to replenish. Now we have it was an uneventful deadline, but we're gonna have a great, draft show. Like, we're gonna talk about more picks, and that might have been the bigger need, right? Like, to have those still available to you to pick at, and obviously some of those could get moved on draft night. We don't know if one of the deals that had a little bit of momentum but didn't get done today somehow picks back up around then, that could happen as well. But the need for the prospects and the picks was higher than the current need to add in those spots, I guess, is what it comes down to. And that's what it kind of seemed like, but we now know that that's what Don Sweeney was thinking, was not willing to go above And he shouldn't have, because it sounded like the asking price for Robert Thomas was kind of crazy, with the fact that no one got it done, right? If there was somebody else who did it and we could sit here and compare, what would the Bruins have had to do to get him, then we'd be able to be like, maybe they should have. But no, like, it seems like that deal just wasn't out there. The picks are valuable to you more than other people. Take the picks.
Well,
and then we'll get the tweets at us, but he doesn't know how to draft. But anyway.
Well, listen, the other thing too is you'll also have more clarity. If you want to circle the wagon in the summertime, you'll know, right? You'll know what that pick from Florida is. Is it a 27 pick or is it a 28 pick, right? You'll know what your pick is from Toronto. Did Toronto sneak into the top 5 and it's no longer yours, or is it yours, right?
So, or are you now dealing a 6th or 7th overall pick? And at this point in time, where are they? Where would they be picking now? Like 10th or something? Like,
I just had it up. Toronto is 21st in the NHL in points. They are 21st as well. Actually, hold on, 30. Well, I'll count. They're around the same in points percentage. So they're outside the top 10 barely. They're right around 10. I'd say.
So I guess, I mean, a 6th overall pick is worth more to you and the rest of the league than a 11th or 12th overall pick. Obviously, we're talking pre-lottery because things change, but the values to that in and of itself are significant to certain people who maybe are looking to add a specific player that's only going to be available in the 6 to 8 range or something like that.
8th overall right now is what Toronto would be pre-lottery.
You know what? That'd be pretty good for the Bruins. I would take that. I'd probably take that pick. I'd take that one.
Yeah, and Toronto didn't. They didn't cut quite as deep as maybe people thought they might. Like, they didn't go full fire sale, and maybe that keeps them more above water and out of that bottom 5. Like, there's some really bad Western Conference teams down there, plus like the Rangers. So yeah, like, maybe they may very well need to have lottery luck to jump up into that group.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So listen, I think, and then other players, right? Like we talked about Mason Lohrei, Matt Patra, guys like that, like I'll speak for myself when talking about them in possible trade scenarios. I'm not itching to get them out of Boston. It was simply, if the right deal presents itself, you're going to have to include something of value, and they have value to teams. Now, maybe, Bridgette, to your point earlier, maybe Don Sweeney found out that maybe Patra's value isn't as high as he hoped it would be around the league. But those players are still here too, right? And so there's nothing wrong with Providence loading up. Obviously, Dan Zlashmelis is out for, I think, what would be a postseason. But Providence is going to have a very good team down there for the Calder Cup race. So, there's nothing wrong with Providence having that experience too. No one's trying to just get these players out of Boston for nothing, right? But if the right deal offers, but it didn't. So, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and grade the Bruins trade deadline as an A because they didn't really do anything. But sometimes it's the moves that you don't do that I'm more satisfied with. So I don't think that this deadline, the players that were out there, they weren't needle movers, and I didn't want to give up anything of true value for any of those guys that went. So,
and you are now past the trade deadline, so you can't add players that way. But there is a way that you can add players, and they might add James Hagens when the college season ends. So, like, there's one more round of like influx of new players available that happens as college teams get eliminated. This is the last weekend of the Hockey East men's regular season playoff start. BC right now is in a position to make the tournament. They lost yesterday against UMass. That didn't help their NPI ranking, but they still are inside the cut line. So as long as they win a few in the Hockey East tournament, they should make it. And they also have a game Saturday that would be important for them to win, but that's their last game of the regular season. So tracking them, if they make it to the Hockey East tournament, if they make it to the NCAA tournament, we're talking about late March, early April. But there's still a chance that you add him, and he's kind of your secret little addition that if they decide that he's going to make an impact, because we've heard Sweeney use that kind of language when asked about him pre-deadline and post-deadline. He was asked about James Hagens coming up, and it was, can he make an impact on the team? Can he make an impact on the team? So if he's determined that he wouldn't, then maybe he starts in Providence. But I don't know. I am hard pressed to think he doesn't do a better job, or it doesn't move the needle over an Asamont, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a few guys that you could probably see. All right, I think he could do a little bit more than.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple layers to that, right? Where it's like, one, we've seen players be able to jump in out of college and make an impact. We've also seen guys maybe jump in and not make as much of an impact as you might have thought, like Ryan Leonard last year, where he jumps in with Washington down the stretch and into the playoffs and kind of struggles and is, pretty quiet. And like, that's normal. Like, that's not anything to freak out about. I
feel like he did what was reasonably expected. No.
Yes. I think what he did was what should have been reasonably expected.
Yeah.
I think some people were disappointed. I think people thought like, oh, he's going to jump in and be like an immediate impact third liner who, third or second liner who like
sophomore in college,
who like really elevates the Capitals for a playoff run. And it's like, that's like really hard to do. Like it's happened, Charlie McAvoy did it. Chris Kreider did it in smaller samples, but Sweeney was asked about that today. Kevin Paul Dupont asked him, like, going back to when McAvoy turned pro at the end of his sophomore season at BU and actually played 4 games in Providence first. And Sweeney was like, like in that case, I think there was value, not just for McAvoy, but like also for us to see how he handles himself as a pro. So you can tell it's at least like in Sweeney's head that there could be some value to James Hagens playing games in Providence. Now, my guess is how that could happen is he signs, plays in Boston to start his ELC, maybe gets a couple games, and then if there's still time, go down to Providence for a few games, right? Like if he doesn't make an impact right away in Boston, say, okay, James, like you got your taste. We want to send you down to Providence to work on these things. And you might be back in a week or two, but like for now, here's a couple of things we want you to work on in Providence. So yes, like there's a few different ways that could go.
If they're in a postseason, like playing in their postseason wouldn't be the worst thing either, down in Providence. So obviously we still are unsure what the Bruins postseason situation will be. So with that loss in Nashville, they didn't do themselves any favors. So it was a bad. I don't know if it changed the deadline that ultimately happened, but it wasn't a good way to go into it.
No, let's talk about it, because honestly, that game sucked, and it hasn't been I don't think it's been a very pretty stretch of hockey for the Bruins since they've come back from the Olympics. They've had their moments and they've had their wins, right? You beat Columbus, which, as you said earlier, like they're now a point behind the Bruins. Now the Bruins do have a game in hand on them, but thank God you won that game head to head. That's a 4-point swing that you're desperately thankful for right now. But you beat the Penguins. You lost to the Flyers.
Quick correction: you do not have a game in hand on Columbus. That is a true 1-point gap.
Oh, okay. Then I take it back. So, you beat the Blue Jackets, thank God. You lose to the Flyers in a game that you outplayed them. Okay, but you lost. And then you beat Pittsburgh in a game that I don't think you outplayed the Penguins. I think they outplayed you, and you won that one. And then you get your ass kicked against Nashville, who just traded away 3 or 4 players over the last couple of days, and they're not a good team.
O'Reilly.
No Ryan O'Reilly, and you're down 5-1 after 2. It's a shit loss, and that's there's no excuse for it. And you're trying to look at the game and say, okay, why did they lose the game? What's the one thing you can point to? And it was a lot of things. It was a lot of things. Elias Lindholm, you got an empty net. How about you bury it instead of smiling with UC Saros afterwards? You got me. No, you should be pretty upset that you missed a wide open net because now it's 1-0 after one instead of 1-1. Huge momentum killer there. But I'm glad you had a laugh about it. And then David Pastrnak, just a terrible, ill-advised pass on the 4-on-3, 2-0 Nashville. It's Corpusalo. I didn't love the first goal by Nicholas Hague. That's a squeaker. Like everybody, nobody brought their game. And listen, I know things happen, but this is crunch time. And there are certain players that I thought were playing excellent prior to the break, and I think that they're still having a hard time getting going. Nikita Zadorov comes to my mind right now. He's a guy that I've been looking for him the last 4 games. He's not had the same presence he had before the Olympic break, and that can be said about a good amount of guys. So they're going to get their shit in gear here, because if they don't, they'll be on the outside looking in, and that's not a place you want to be with 20 games to go in the season.
Yeah, and like look at the upcoming schedule. It's like, all right, Saturday you're at home against Washington, who just sold off a couple pieces, including a franchise legend in John Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, should be a game you take advantage of, but Nashville should have been a game you took advantage of. So, then Sunday in Pittsburgh, like as you laid out earlier, Brian, it's like maybe if Columbus passes Pittsburgh, like maybe that's the team you're battling with. So that's a huge one. How about Pasternak's back check on that first goal? Like overcommits to the puck and leaves Hague wide open for that one-timer. Again, which Corpusalo should have stopped, but also just like just a bad read, just losing your guy. I think Pastrnak has struggled a bit since coming back. Gigi's had chances, but hasn't buried as many of them. Obviously, he has that great one-timer for a power play goal Thursday night. I think that clocked in at like 97 miles an hour. I don't think the fourth line has done a whole lot since coming back. They're not exactly, there's been a couple fights, but otherwise they're not exactly setting the tone the way that you've become accustomed to. I think Fraser Minton has struggled a little bit since the break. Zadorov definitely.
Kuzi's perfect.
Kuzi's perfect. I think McAvoy's been good.
He's been good.
I think Hampus Lindholm's been pretty good. And your second line continues to be pretty good. So that's not enough. You got to get more going here.
You know who we never mention and who never comes up, and we literally didn't talk about once, like the last several episodes? Casey Middlestat. Like, I feel like we never talk about him. Like, he's on his second line that's working. He was added at last year's trade deadline.
Yeah,
he's someone we didn't know what was going to happen with when they traded for him at last year's trade deadline. In the aftermath of all that happened, then he was one of the bigger pieces that came back. And we just don't talk about them, but like, I guess it's better than us sitting around going every episode you shouldn't have done that, or they shouldn't have traded for him, or what would it? No, it's been fine. Like there's certain players on the team that we don't talk about as much because they're doing kind of as expected. They're not below, they're not above, or maybe even in his case, maybe he's slightly above, right? But just we end up talking about other people and things more, but
yeah, he's fifth on the team in 5-on-5 scoring, and I think you're right, Bridge. Like he's been good. He's been good. No doubt about it. That line's been good, and you see some rumor and innuendo online about the Bruins maybe extending Victor Arvidsson because he's a good fit in Sturm's system. And, a lot of the conversations surrounding Arvidsson and if the Bruins should trade him if they were offered a first round pick, which, as Scott, you said earlier, I don't think that was ever the case. But the only reason that you really entertain that is if you think that he's a guy that's, going to go somewhere else this summer as a UFA. But if the Bruins plan on extending him, that's fair game too. And I think Middlestat
is a good fit for him too, right? Like why would he want to go somewhere else at this point?
I don't think he would. I think he likes, the situation he's in.
So it seems like there's probably an avenue for extension if that's maybe even if it's just a 1 year, 1 year at a time kind of situation because of his age. It seems like there's no reason for me to think you couldn't get that done, and that the asking price probably wouldn't be crazy, because if other teams, who knows what the other team's interest will be.
I think my question with Arvidsson long term is, like, if you sign him to an extension for a couple of years, 2-3 years, whatever it is, it's I have a hard time seeing him in your lineup going forward. Like beyond this year, like, you should have Hagens around, right? Like players like Letourneau and Zellers and Minton and Husnudinov, all these younger players, in addition to Elias Lindholm, who I want to talk about as well. But you have him and Geeky and Pasternak and Zaka. Like, I struggle to see the intermediate fit with Arvidsson. Maybe that's a Brian problem, but as younger players keep coming into the lineup, I don't know. Like, how do you guys, like, what would an extension for him look like? A year, 2 years, like a year-to-year thing? And what does that mean for him if younger players start to bump him down the lineup? Is he somebody that you want in your third line or fourth line in a couple of years? Or
yeah, I guess I would need to see what it looks like. Like, in my mind, I had like 2 years, $4 million a year, and I'm like, I don't know if that gets it done, but like, I'd be fine with something like that. Like, that seems perfectly reasonable for what he's given you, and it doesn't lock him up too long. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it. And Sweeney did say, that he didn't quite tip his hand. He said he's had conversations with Arvidsson and Peake's agents, but he didn't explicitly say, like, I'm trying to get an extension done. So he said, like, I think they know where we stand. So that could be we're interested in an extension. It could also be shelve it until the off season and we'll talk then. So, but yeah, I could see it with Arvidsson. Like, I think there's at least some level of interest there. Obviously Sturm loves him. So, depending on what it looks like, I'm on board. Now, if you tell me it's like 4-year extension over $5 million a year or something, like, no, thank you. But
yeah,
something shorter term and relatively low money, sure.
All right. Now, speaking of future fit, especially with younger kids coming into the lineup, can we have a conversation right now about Elias Lindholm? Because he's your number one center, right? Contractually, right? He's being paid as such. Now, I know he's not being paid like, true one Cesar Scott. You've made that point in the past, but right now on the Bruins books, like, he's their top center. But even if you sit there and say to me, well, Brian, don't worry, maybe he'll be a second line center in a year or two, or third line. He's currently producing like a third liner right now, especially at 5-on-5. I mean, he is what, 11th on the Bruins in 5-on-5 scoring. He's beneath Tanner Jeannot and Husnudinov and Minton. And like, I'm sorry, but like, I can't see that on paper and then watch him on the ice at 5-on-5, guys. He's kind of an offensive anchor at 5-on-5. He does well in the power play. I'll give him that. 5-on-5, he doesn't. Do you see a lot of good give and goes with him and Pasternak? Do you see a lot of creativity and chemistry and offensive? No. He sometimes, once in a while, he finds himself in the right spot at the right time. Like last night in Nashville, had he converted. And he's capable of finishing an opportunity here or there. But what's the deal? What he's locked up for quite a bit here, and he's got a no move for 3 or 4 more seasons, whatever it is. Like, what do you do with him? He doesn't even seem like a top 2 center right now at 5-on-5.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't have a good answer. Like, it's frustrating to watch at times. Like, one thing that stands out to me so much, and I feel like I didn't even see this as much last year from him, is how often he's just not moving his feet.
Yeah.
Where it's like he's just like floating and it's like waiting. It's like, oh, I'll just get myself in good position, in case the puck pops out, I'll be in a support position. It's like, no, sometimes you actually have to like move your feet and be the aggressor and go get it. And it's like, it seems like he just never has that. Like, you see that so much from guys like Husnudinov And, even like Alex Steves when he was in the lineup early, that whole second line does it. It's like, guys, just like those second, third efforts, just constantly on the move, circling back to pucks, attacking. And with Elias Lindholm, so often it is just like, sit back, wait, monitor the situation. And it's like, no, like attack, like get in there. Like there's a play, I think it was 2 games ago. I think it was the Pittsburgh game where it was a loose puck in the neutral zone. And he actually, coming from 2 different angles, was like about just as close as the Pittsburgh player. And there's no other Bruin close enough. And he's like gliding towards it, and the Pittsburgh player just easily beats him to the loose puck. And I'm like, what is that? And then I'm like, is it end of the shift? Is he going for a change? Nope. Circle back and stays on the ice and like continues the shift. I'm like, what is that play? Like, what are you doing there? It's like, so beyond the contractual questions and like what you do with them moving forward, which is all fair. And like I said, I just don't have an answer to. Like in the here and now, someone's got to get through to him and be like, dude, you got to start moving your feet and like working harder, like period.
Yeah. And like, we haven't spent much time talking about him because his contract just is what it is. And it sometimes it just feels like we'll just bash our heads against the wall. But, to me, it's, again, he can make some plays here and there on the power play, right? He's good with Zacha in transition. He's okay in the power play, and he's one of 5 players on the top 5 power play. So it is what it is. But 5-on-5, when's the last time in a Bruins uniform that you said, "Wow, what a pass by Lindholm there! Wow, what a shot by Lindholm 5-on-5"? Or when's the last time you saw him beat somebody 1-on-1? He has zero creativity. I am glad that he can win faceoffs, and I'm glad that he, is defensively in the right positions. I'm not trying to take away the little things that he does that aren't sexy to watch. But I got to tell you guys, offensively, he offers absolutely nothing at 5-on-5. And, we talked about David Pastrnak earlier and his inability to kind of get going in recent games. There's been listen, he could have had 4 or 5 assists in some of these games. Like he set up geeky grade A's like 2 or 3 times against Philly. He set up Lindholm last night against Nashville. If those go in, we're talking about Pastrnak having a handful of points in the last 3 or 4 games, but they didn't go in. So we start to say, okay, David's been fighting it a bit, but he's played well this year with Husnudinov at center. He's played well this year with Minton. Like man, like it just feels like there's such a heavy obligation to play Elias with David because of where he's supposed to slot. It's like, can we have the conversation? Like, do you think Don and Marco talk about this? Like, I know that GMs and coaches aren't, always talking X's and O's. It's not always appropriate, but you think they see this? Do you think they see this 5-on-5 enigma that is wearing 28 most nights? And what are they going to do about it?
Well, I think obviously they see it. I think they probably, I think they would talk about it. I mean, they have a relationship and it's part of their jobs to communicate, needs and X's and O's on a day-to-day basis. No, but like an overall long-term, hey, what do you think of this person? I'm sure is part of the conversation. And what do you do about it? There's not a lot you can do about it because of the no trade. So what do you do about it? I guess the actual answer is internally, what do you do about it? Eventually you hope that maybe Hagens is your 1C at some point in the nearer future, not saying next year, not even, who knows after that. But then what happens to Minton and what happens down the, like, it's a ripple effect that you have to, I guess, maybe it's not even their biggest fish to fry currently. So maybe it gets pushed further down the road. It's hard because, I mean, we talked about this when the news broke initially, when he was added and he was the best available center. All right, great. Good move, right? best available center, and you get Zadorov, big, tough defenseman. Like, those were moves that we were, I think, all pretty on the positive side of. Not like there were pros and cons that we talked about, but we were thinking at that time they were in such desperate need of a number one center, and this was kind of the only guy out there. This was the best available guy out there. Got him. Hoping to get something else out of him. And who's to say, maybe eventually he does kind of snap into it, but right now he's not. So
I just don't, Bridgette, I don't, Bridgette, I don't,
just that he does at some point, I guess.
Bridgette, I gotta be honest with you, I don't see the skill set ability from him. He doesn't have any separation speed. He doesn't have a great shot. He's not a great passer.
Well, they were hoping he was a bumper guy.
On a power play, yeah, but 5-on-5.
They're no, and and I think that they looked at the power play stuff as extremely valuable, right?
Which it is, but like you don't hand out huge contracts for just a power play special, right? Like you need him to be part of what you're building 5-on-5, and I don't know, maybe it's reducing ice time. I mean, he played 15-29. Against Nashville. Now that's a game that gets out of hand, so maybe you're just spreading ice time around anyways. But usually he's 18 to 20 minutes, which is he's second among all your forwards in average ice time behind only Pasternak, which is kind of crazy to think about because it's where's that ice time going? What is he doing in all those minutes? Power play's obviously a big part of it because he's on the top unit, but he's not even a huge part of their penalty kill this year. He's not one of their, he gets some PK time, but he's not one of their top penalty killing forwards. He's not one of the first two over the boards. So it's a lot of 5-on-5 ice time. And Brian, to your point, he's not driving play there. So
no, and you need 88 to be going. And listen, like I said, maybe David's dealing with something. Maybe he's not having, good puck luck. Maybe he's fighting it. I don't know. But you know what else isn't going right now? You mentioned the fourth line, the third line. I mean, every game has started with Husnudinov on the wing with Lindholm and Pasternak. And then you got Geeky with Minton and, Asimont or whomever. And then you switch things up and now Kuzi goes down to the third line with, Minton and Asimont. And that doesn't really do a whole lot. And Geeky and Lindholm, they're not the fastest players in the world. So now David just kind of trying to do too much. And now you're starting to just lose continuity everywhere. And it's okay, you signed Lindholm when you did. Great. It is what it is. But can you do something right now to better slot people and get things going? I think putting Husnudinov between Geeky and Pasternak was a line that I liked earlier this year. Maybe you do Lindholm and, I don't know, Lindholm and Steves and Minton or I don't know. Obviously now you're in a situation where you got Lindholm and Minton on the same line. That's probably not ideal. And then, part of me says, well, what about Pavel Zacha with David? They spent some time together a lot over the last 3 years. There was a time in the Centennial season where you had Geeky centering Zacha and Pasternak. Obviously that would be the other way around now where Zacha would be centering. But the rebuttal is always, yeah, but you can't take away Zacha from Boston's second line and spend their best line. And I know, but something has to give here. And I don't know.
I know. The frustration's there because it's not just you thinking it, because I take my daily phone call from my father who has his thoughts. That was one of his thoughts yesterday. So obviously I live in Boston and he lives in Southern Mass, and he likes to video call me during the games just to get my thoughts and to tell me his thoughts on the games. And he was like, I don't know where Elias Lindholm is tonight, was one of his comments from the Nashville game. So I don't think you're the only one thinking it, Brian. I'm sure people sitting on their couch over the past few games might have been having similar thoughts.
It's at a certain point, I've been a proponent of just keeping that second line together and letting them do their thing. But at a certain point, if you have three other lines not really going, it can't be untouchable.
Do we think that's the main reason why that first line's not fully going?
I think it's a huge reason. I think Lindholm's an anchor. I said it, he's 11th on the team in 5-on-5 scoring, and like I said, even beyond that, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't have great speed. He doesn't have great hands, vision, shooting. He's okay at a lot of things, and he's great in the faceoff dot. And he's a smart player. And defensively, I don't want to diminish what he does defensively, but he's not a super intense guy. Scott said it. He looks like he's not even moving half the time. I don't know. It's just when you're playing alongside one of the best wingers in the world, and you're 11th on your team in 5-on-5 hockey, 5-on-5 production, like that's pretty tough to do if you have any sort of offensive, anything. Like, he's in a great position here to produce, and he can't do anything. He's got Pastrnak and Geekie are two of the better goal scorers in the league, like modern day. Like, it's just certainly the last couple of years with Geekie, and he can't find a niche for himself. He can't find a role for himself. Like, I don't know. Like, you gotta do more than win faceoffs. Like 55%. Like, you gotta do more.
Yeah, I guess the niche would be the faceoffs. I will agree with you, Brian. And this is something I see. There's so many. I watch too much hockey because this isn't even my only job. Obviously, people know who watch this podcast a lot or listen to this podcast a lot that I cover college hockey. There's so many good lines in college hockey that you notice more dominant than other lines because they have elite talent, but they also have, and I've noticed this past year, like, they have like-minded players, right? You need to have like-minded players together. You need to have guys with, people always say, hockey IQ, right? Like, you need guys that are thinking at a certain speed, understanding each other well on the ice, understanding, what your coach wants you to do, all kind of being on the same page about that kind of stuff. The best lines in college hockey that I have seen are a combination of high skill. So obviously you got, like in the Bruins equivalent would be like, obviously Pastrnak, right? Like, and he thinks the game at such a high level. Well, who else can be there mentally with him? And that's why Geekie has looked good at times with him. That's why Husnudinov has looked good at times with him. But when you're trying to find the centerpiece, you need a centerpiece that also thinks the game the same way. And I feel like those two, they're both, a lot of times people are like, oh, European style hockey, like they get each other. I don't really know if those two are on the same page in terms of what they're thinking, the chemistry of it, what needs to be done. Where is this person going to be? What does this person want to do? Like, the speed of thinking the game and the speed of playing the game all have to kind of mesh and line up. And when you talk about a center that would be best suited for Pastrnak, it normally comes down to somebody that can anticipate him the right way, and keep up with him.
Yeah.
Now, I will point out, just in the sake of fairness here, and to maybe, maybe where we need to give it a little more time coming off a couple bad games, the line of Husnudinov, Lindholm, and Pastrnak, when they've been together this year, which is now 146 minutes, Bruins have outscored opponents 8-3 at 5-on-5 with them on the ice. And they're over 50% in terms of like Corsi expected goals. So
does it show you who were
it's not like it's a train wreck, right? Like they've had good results. That's been a successful line at times, but it has not looked good since the break.
Scott, how about, is it possible to look up Geekie, Lindholm, and Pastrnak?
Yeah, that one struggled. Bruins have been outscored 13-12.
Yeah, because the difference is Husnudinov has speed and tenacity. And listen, there are some games where Geekie's not the fastest skater. We all know that. But there are certain games and moments where he has good jump, right? I never see any jump out of Lindholm, but Husnudinov does offer that speed and tenacity that I'm not surprised. There's not enough. Even David, like Pastrnak he's not the speedster he was when he came into the league. He's an above average skater. I think he has above average speed, certainly. but he's not the burner he once was when he was, 20, 21, 22, and the league was all in their late 20s. Like, you have to remember, he's 29 now, right? So he's still an above average skater, but that line, they're not a speedster line. And so it doesn't surprise me that in a league today that's very fast, that those three together aren't jumping off the analytics page.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe at some point you try the kid line again, Pasternak, Minton, Husnudinov, and then you put Lindholm with Geeky and Alex Steves, which had a moment there for a little bit.
Now we're talking. Just do something. Do something to change
solutions oriented.
It has to be more than, well, we signed Lindholm for 7 years, whatever it was, and we're not going to. No, it's okay to switch things up just because you signed somebody. You can move down the lineup and whatever. It's just they got to do something because they are in jeopardy right now. They're not. Their playoff positioning is anything but secured. Right, you got a lot of work to do here.
We bring you the problems and we bring you the solutions. There you go. Scott said it. I don't think any of the solutions were traded for today at the trade deadline. So.
No.
And we're going to be back to more of the same conversations.
And nor should they have been, right? Like we talked about the first half of the episode, right? I think they were. We all think they did. It wasn't meant to be this deadline. Like, combination of reasons, right? So, any parting thoughts from the two of you before we sign out today?
No, I gotta go eat dinner. I'm starving.
Okay, all right.
I have a no one's gonna listen to this in time, but I'm gonna be on Arcand at 7:30, so I do have that coming up in about an hour. But my parting thing is that people should listen to Nesson on Saturday, 4:00. Doing play-by-play for the PC UConn men's hockey game. If you like college hockey, PC is the #1 team in Hockey East right now. UConn's trying to make it into the NCAA tournament, keep their MPI up. It'll be a really good game. And then the game following me is Boston College. So if you want to watch James Hagens, who scored again Thursday, Dean Letourneau, just watch Nesson all day Saturday is what I'm trying to say. At least start at 4 when my game starts. So that's my spiel. Yeah, and then the Hockey East men's tournament starts on Wednesday as well. I think I'll be doing a game on Wednesday and Saturday. So
yeah, and I mean that works. You can just watch like a hockey triple header because Bruins that's 12:30 game Saturday. Obviously national TV, not Nesson, but
then after that,
you can go three games straight.
So if BC were to get upset in the first round and they don't win Hockey East, are they still national tournament qualifiers?
They're very close.
Okay.
They are, yeah. They can't really. I would say they probably can't lose in the first round, right?
I'm trying to figure out when the earliest could be that maybe we're talking about James Hagens.
They're not playing the first round. Like, they have a bye.
Okay.
As they stand right now, they would have a bye into the quarterfinals, but they still need to win that first matchup of the playoffs, probably. Could they still make it? Yes, but you'd feel much more comfortable if they won that. Because it also depends on what else happens, right? Like the thing about college hockey bubble talk is that you don't know who's going to win the conference tournaments, and if a non inside the top 16 team wins, that takes away one of those spots that you thought might be available for an at-large bid. So if there's a bunch of upsets in conference tournaments, that would not be good for them if they don't win their own conference tournament. So there's going to be a lot of watching other teams for them if they can't, control their own destiny with some wins here.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the earliest would be after the end of the Hockey East tournament, because as long as BC would have like any chance of getting an at-large bid, obviously he's not going to sign, even if BC's already out of the Hockey East tournament.
Right. You gotta wait and see.
So that's Hockey East championship is March 21st.
So yeah, you're not seeing him before March 21st. I don't think there's any world where you're seeing him before that. So
I do remember one year, because when I used to do like some stuff for College Hockey News, we would always have like a live blog for the conference championships with breaking down like all the, it was pairwise back then, but like all the scenarios. And I remember there was one year where someone signed and his team still had like a minuscule chance, but like a 1% chance or maybe even less than that of getting an at-large bid, but he had just already signed. And like it didn't matter. Like obviously it didn't happen. But I was like, what if like things had just like broken totally right and like one of this team's best players just already left?
He clearly didn't think they had a chance to make it to the title.
Yeah.
But no, and there's certain teams that right now, if they lose in their first, like their season's over. If they lose in the tournament, like right now, BU is not an at-large team. And Sasha Boisvert has already said that as soon as the season's over, he's going to Chicago. So those kind of teams with those kind of players, we'll see them in the next 2 weeks, right? Like there are some guys that will potentially be up in the pros 2 weeks from now.
I kept jokingly, I've for months now been kind of jokingly telling Razor like BU's turnaround starts this weekend. And then they actually swept BC last weekend. I'm like, it's finally happening. Finally happening, the BU turnaround.
Yep. Yeah. They got one last game on Saturday against Lowell. If they don't win that, I don't know how great I feel about their chances in the Hockey East tournament. Yeah, we had Morello. We had Jonathan Morello on the show this week as well. He was pretty good. He's a Bruins prospect who's playing for BU. So, but he's a freshman and he's not going to be leaving after this year. He'll stick around.
Scott, I know you said you have to get dinner, but you mentioned Razor. I got a bone to pick here because I heard him on the Greg Hill show, and he kept saying what he said in the years past, which is I don't care about picks and prospects, and it's like I don't know, like what do you like for this Bruins team? You wouldn't care trading away like their current first round pick. I just think that shtick just like doesn't work every year. Like if it's a true contender, like, and you're talking about this Bruins team with their current picks to make that comment, I just found like, come on, like that's so player, like that's such from a player's perspective. Like that's not a fair thing to say with this current Bruins team. I didn't agree with that at all in the moment when I heard that.
Yeah, I don't think Razor's in line to be the next GM when Don Sweeney's time is up, but yeah,
he's all in every year.
Yeah, it's like the Los Angeles Rams, like literally. I think Sean McVay like jokingly on a podcast said like fuck them picks because like the Rams went like 7 years without a first round pick or something because they just kept trading them.
Yeah,
but. Obviously, like where the Bruins are right now, it's like, yeah, you should care about the picks a little bit, and
the market out. Like who was we've talked about it. Who was out there this deadline? I was like, oh, you got to bring those guys in. Like, no, anyway, random thought, but it's popped in my head because you mentioned Razor. But anyway, all right, thank you all very much for listening. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.